Hi, everyone. I'm Ethan Suplee, and this is LifeLONG, powered by Two-Way. Every week, this will be our space on the internet where practical health meets real life, and a community where we share the best practices around food, fitness, and mindset. Before digging into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and how I got here. I was put on my very first diet at 5 years old. When I look at pictures of myself at 5, I don't see a fat kid. I see a pretty normal looking kid, but I was started on diets. And from the time I was 5 to about 15, I was put on every wacky 80s diet there was. The cabbage soup diet, the Atkins diet, the Beverly Hills diet, the Hollywood Master Cleanse diet. I begged my mom at 10 to let me do the Vogue diet, which was a bottle of Suplee and 2 hard-boiled eggs a day. She didn't think that one was a good idea. When I was a teenager, I found drugs and alcohol, and for a few years was a bit of a mess. At 20 years old, my doctor told me I was going to die. I had congestive heart failure, and that's when I started to change my life. It took me about a year to get my sea legs under me in sobriety. And then I realized I had a whole other aspect of myself that wasn't being concentrated on, and that was my weight. The first time I went on a diet of my own volition was 2002, and I was 550 pounds. And I spent many years losing and regaining hundreds of pounds before I figured out how to maintain my weight at a healthy size. And a lot of that had to do with my willingness to communicate about it. I started talking to people about it. I started to be vulnerable. I started to share my experience. There was this feeling for a long time after I'd lose weight that I wanted to forget the person I had been. And the problem with that is I didn't actually change who I was. So now it's a daily process of trying to recreate myself, finding ways of making myself better. And one of the biggest steps that's helped me with this is communicating with people. And I wanna have a place where I can communicate with you and you can communicate back with me. My story isn't really a before and after. It's 20 years of work, of failing, trying again, and finally realizing that change isn't about punishment or restriction. It's about honesty, patience, and finding community that helps me do the work every day that I'd like to help you with too. That's part of why I wanted to do this show, because so many of us are chasing that fix, the pill, the plan, the magic answer, when the real solution starts with understanding ourselves. A lot of the change that I've experienced has come through how I perceive myself and how I deal with my compulsions and my behaviors. And that applies to any diet or regimen that I'm doing. All right. On that note, I'm doing it with a platform called Two-Way, which I'm really excited about because Two-Way isn't just a place to watch shows. It's built so you can join the conversation. When LifeLONG airs, you can talk to me and be a part of the show. I guess this is a good time to introduce Trace, the producer. Trace?
Hello.
Hello. He is the voice, the disembodied voice that makes all of this happen.
And we now have a clip to play for you to comment on.
All right.
Hi. So I'm currently trying to recalibrate my relationship with exercise. Every time it begins, and it only really begins in fits and starts, it's very short-lived because I can't find any way to enjoy it. I can't muscle my way through just really, really hating it at the beginning. And especially with all the messaging of like, do this amount of exercise to become more masculine or more desirable, or, you know, it's implicit. I find myself really defeated and not even wanting to attempt it. So how would I go about finding a way to exercise that brings me joy?
Thank you so much for that. I love that he took the time to send in a video of the question. Did he say his name, Trace?
Jake.
Jake, thank you, Jake. I always had this imagination that a super masculine body would be desirable for women, and I'm married, and it's not that I'm like seeking approval from women, but I will tell you that what I found is the only people that ever comment on my body, for the most part, other than somebody just saying you look great or you lost weight, and the only bodies that I find myself kind of taking note of are other masculine bodies, which is not what I ever wanted to be desirable. Anyway, my point is the ideas that I have around what I expect out of desirability or masculinity, those have really very little to do with how I exercise or what I've done with my body. That's more of an inner thing that I kind of work on myself. And as far as the piece about finding enjoyment in exercise, I think if you're not enjoying it on some level, then you're never going to continue doing it. Then it's going to be short-lived no matter what. And if your priorities are desirability and masculinity, I think you could, for masculinity, learn to cut down a tree or change a tire. I don't know that you find the answer to that in the gym. So the only thing I get out of the gym now every single day is feeling better. Moving my body, exercising, breaking a sweat just makes me feel better the rest of the day. It's like, a cure for depression to a degree for me. I have a better day when I exercise. So that's why I would encourage exercise of some sort. But the piece about enjoying it, whether that's at a gym or taking a walk or hiking or pickleball or basketball, is that you have to find some way to enjoy it. So keep trying. If you go to the gym and you hate it and it's just a struggle, pivot to something else and find another thing that you enjoy just slightly less. It doesn't all have to be fun. I certainly don't look forward to going to the gym every single day, but I know that I will feel better, and that's what keeps me going and putting myself through that. And that's what I love about it. All right. It makes this a community because you wrote in, Jake. Thank you. And listen, also, I don't have all the answers, but I've learned that when people share their experiences, it helps all of us get a little stronger, a little more grounded, and a little more consistent. Now I want to bring in someone who knows a lot about the science of change and what's happening right now in the world of metabolic health. Dave Knapp. Dave is the founder and host of On the Pen, a platform and podcast focused on obesity medicine, type 2 diabetes, and especially GLP-1 therapies. And he has a personal perspective for people trying to rebuild their relationship with food, fitness, and their own bodies. Check him out at On the Pen on Substack and Instagram and all the places. Dave, thank you so much for joining me.
Ethan, thanks for having me. This is just great. So much magic happens in terms of your health journey when you do it in community. So I just love what you're doing here.
Yeah, I want to have conversations. And right now, I think in the world of weight loss, health, fitness, all of that, GLP-1s are the absolute biggest topic. I think it probably would have been like carnivore or some other diet, moments ago, and we blinked. And there's always going to be those hiccups, like the debate on seed oils or processed food or red dye or whatnot. But I think over all of that is GLP-1s. And I know a little bit about them, but I think you've done way more research. You have your own anecdotal understanding of them, and you have like a clinical understanding from our conversations. So I think that you're somebody who can talk about that.
Yeah, I really think that this started off probably in people's minds exactly as you've said. It started off as as this conversation about Ozempic, and Ozempic was just the next fad thing, right? But when I first got into it for myself, Ethan, it was because I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I actually didn't want medicine, but it was sort of something that my doctor was pushing me towards to control my diabetes. And when I learned what these medications are doing for people metabolically, I just basically efforted to learn everything there was about them.
Yeah. What was the initial, when you started taking them, what was the initial findings? Like, because I guess they were trialed as a type 2 diabetes medicine, and then they found that there was a side effect or a byproduct was weight loss. And that, like, I know that I believe there are something like 30 million type 2 diabetics who are insulin dependent. So that's like a huge portion of the people who are probably going to be put on these. But then, half the country, half of 150 million, half of 300 million people plus are obese. And so that opens the door to a much bigger population for that byproduct of weight loss.
Sure. Well, I think what's important for people to understand about GLP-1s is GLP-1 is actually a hormone that's naturally made in your body in response to eating food. It's called a nutrient stimulated hormone. And they've actually been around for a long time. They've actually been around for 20 plus years. The first one was actually kind of a cool story, actually. So the first one was discovered as a byproduct of a peptide found in Gila Monster venom. And they basically did some research. They were doing research on different venom from different lizards and basically found that this particular venom had a profound effect on blood glucose. And then as they studied it and put some research dollars behind it, they found that actually this peptide called exendin 4 very closely matched a natural occurring hormone in your body called GLP-1, except naturally occurring GLP-1 has two enemies of the body. And this is a hormone that's responsible for satiation, feeling full in the brain, helping to encourage your pancreas to make insulin when you need it, slowing digestion, all of these sort of metabolic processes within the body. And this peptide mimicked that, but instead of lasting just a few minutes in the body, exendin 4 actually lasted hours. And so it allowed people to have blood sugar control for an extended period of time. And they found that it also reduced the caloric intake, the energy intake of the patients that took this peptide as well. So it had its roots in diabetes, but the hormone itself, GLP-1, is a critical hormone in terms of helping people control their hunger and something your body naturally produces.
Okay, great. And when you started on these, was it a miraculous reaction? Like, did your body, what happened?
One of the main things that it did was just let me eat normal people food and have my body behave in a normal way, right? No more blood sugar spikes up to over 200, right? It just sort of made, if you wear a CGM, right, and you're type 2 diabetic, you're used to seeing these crazy peaks and valleys when you consume carbohydrates. Now, the beauty of taking these medications for me as a type 2 diabetic is my blood sugar just behaves normally. And so that's been the biggest effect for me, is just being able to feel like a normal person again. In terms of the weight loss, I started at about 319 pounds when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And even after a year of like white knuckling the keto diet, because ultimately my doctor was like, you got to do keto. And I said, whatever it's going to take, doc, I want to stay off medicines. I don't want to have surgery. So after a year of white knuckling the ketogenic diet, my blood sugar was controlled, but my weight was not even remotely controlled. Went to 319 to 312. I've been on this specific Mounjaro, which is tirzepatide. I've been on this diabetes medication for now 3 years, just shy of 3 years. And I'm down about 50 pounds from my highest weight. And I haven't done this, crazy ups and downs with my weight either. So it's been a really helpful tool in helping me to manage my weight, but more so in just managing the disease of diabetes and being able to live like a normal guy.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. Was it, you can eat like a normal person, your blood glucose stays normal, so you're not experiencing the highs that is what type 2 diabetes is. In order to get your weight down, has it taken also any other kind of, like, did you have to change anything? Were there things that you had to implement? Like, is it as easy as you just take the shot, or are you doing other stuff, basically, is my question.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a little nuanced for me, to be honest with you, Ethan. So as somebody who's lived with both the disease of diabetes and obesity, it's kind of this double-edged sword. As with anybody who's lived with obesity, and you laid this out beautifully in your opening kind of statement about your own personal journey, I've gained and lost probably over 500 pounds in my lifetime in terms of trying the next best thing. One of my favorite jokes from Martin Short plays this character called Jiminy Glick. And he's like, I've been on Jenny Craig more times than Mr. Craig. And like, I love that line because it's like, I've tried them all. And just like you, I've lost and I've gained, because obesity is a chronic relapsing disease. Now for me, I lost 30 pounds on this drug within the first 4 months. But then the next 2 years, up until a little bit earlier this year, I sort of stayed right there, right? But I was so fatigued, Ethan, from this lifelong experience on the roller coaster that I was just ready to be off it. No more extremes, no more fad diets, no more obsessive tracking. And that's kind of like where my mind was, right? That I just was done with the yo-yoing. But that said, I wasn't doing anything extreme to sort of tackle an extreme problem. I was just taking the shot. It wasn't until earlier this year when I came face to face with this idea that I was actually using alcohol. I think as I've been sort of building this platform and working incredibly hard, kind of like somebody does when they're starting a business, right? Just engrossed in this content creation and building this obesity medicine news platform, that I realized I was relying a little bit too much on alcohol as my way to relax and calm down at the end of the night. So I decided and made a cut alcohol out. And when I made that decision, it's like it unlocked a metabolic key for me, where now as we sit here, I think this morning I jumped on the scale at 268. It's the least I've weighed in over 10 years. And so have I done anything extreme? I mean, if you call quitting alcohol extreme, I wasn't using alcohol maybe to the extent that some other folks have who have really struggled with it, but I was using it enough, obviously, that it was making a huge metabolic difference. And so once I took that out of the equation, it took a few months, but it seems to have really made a difference in the weight loss.
Would you like to take a couple questions now? The two-way chat is live with questions.
I do. I just want to pose one more thing to Dave, and this is one of the questions I have around this. Is a lot of my eating and drug use certainly was being used to comfort myself. I would eat to comfort myself, and I would use drugs and alcohol to comfort myself. And one of the thoughts I've had, and I love your perspective on this, is you introduce this peptide, this drug, and you're no longer really able to eat to comfort yourself. And now that you cut out alcohol as a comforting mechanism, is there a void that you have to address? Because I don't believe there's any free lunches. I believe like there's going to be trade-offs here and there. You know what I mean? And whether that's leaning into religion, leaning into meditation, leaning into exercise, I believe everything's going to require something else. But I'd love to know if when you remove that ability to comfort, are you seeking it in other ways or kind of working on yourself in other ways?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Ethan. I think for me, I have the benefit, this is obviously a very personal question, and I think 100 different people would answer it 100 different ways. My way of answering this is I had a health event, and in my relationship, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. In my relationship with Christ, I found myself in this hospital room, sort of face to face with the idea of my own mortality, kind of similar to your story, Ethan. Like the doctors thought I was in heart failure. And so, I had this conversation with God right there in the ER. I said, what is it about my health? Please illuminate what it is about my health that I'm not addressing in a meaningful way. God, you know my story. You know what I've been through. And very clearly, it was the alcohol. Give up the alcohol. And so for me, it was a step of obedience that ultimately has allowed me to step into a closer relationship with God, which ultimately I don't want to say it's been easy. Giving up anything is very difficult at first if it's something that you've relied on or used for a long period of time. But I would have to say definitely the short answer on that would be my faith.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you, Dave. Okay, Trace, do we have a question that's directed at Dave?
We have a question from Joe that is directed at this very point.
Great. Hi, Joe.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me on. My biggest fear and question, I guess, with GLP-1s is in my weight loss journey, I had gastric sleeve surgery about 4 years ago, 4 years in December, actually. And that decision took me 5 or 6 years to even get to the point where I decided to do that. I regret certain aspects of it because it does lend itself to having kidney stones, which I did have multiple kidney stones and had to have surgeries for. So I've heard a lot of negative effects of GLP-1s if you stop taking them. And long-term effects maybe we don't have all the scientific studies for. So is there any advice or can you comment on something? Because I don't want to, the next step of my weight loss journey, I don't want it to be the same kind of thing where I feel some kind of regret because something didn't go the way I thought it would.
Yeah. Joe, I appreciate the question and I appreciate the candor and sharing your journey. When I was faced with a year of keto that didn't work for me, my doctor said, you need to have the surgery. You need to do the surgery. And that was terrifying for me, Joe. And I'm 3.5 years removed, or three years removed from that conversation with my doctor. And it was only because I didn't have insurance coverage that I didn't look at it more seriously at the time. But ever since then, my community asked me, are you going to have the surgery? And I wrestle with the same thing. So I can appreciate exactly where you are. When it comes to the GLP-1 medications, you have to think of it in terms of the fact that it is treating a disease, right? Just like the surgery was treating a disease, so is the medication. So when you remove a treatment for any disease or chronic condition, you're also going to remove the benefit that gives you. So when you talk about these medications and being long-term or lifelong medications, for most people, it's highly likely that they will be, because again, obesity is a chronic relapsing disease. Now, you bring up some great points. They don't have super long-term data on some of these medications like Mounjaro and Zepbound, which is a little bit newer, acts on a hormone called GIP more so than GLP-1, but GLP-1s have been around for 20 years. So we do have a fair amount of science to look at in terms of the safety of these medications. But I would say if you're not ready to commit to a lifelong medication, then I would want to exhaust every other potential treatment option that your doctor's putting in front of you before that. But for those who have, and there are literally, Joe, there are thousands in our community at On the Pen who have had the surgery, who are now using the medication in either maintenance or to help with regain they've had after surgery. It's important for you to know that if you're somebody who's had surgery, and I'm not talking to you, Joe, necessarily, but anyone who's had surgery who can hear me right now, who has gained weight back, listen, obesity is a chronic relapsing disease, and we're like this far along in a massive mountain of science that we're unraveling in terms of how to treat it long term, and these are just the next evolution.
Yeah, I appreciate that point so much, Dave, because for the longest time, I really did think of my weight as an acute thing that I could handle once, and once the weight was off, I no longer had that condition was gone. And then when it would come back, I would be so surprised and, upset every single time. But today I do think of it as a chronic condition. It's something that I've had since I was a little kid. And it's something that if I don't work diligently at today, will continue to this day. And so there is, this idea that it like the problem disappears with weight loss has not proven to be true for me. And when I think about things like medication, I have a child who's got type 1 diabetes, who's 20 years old now and has been on insulin since she was 4. And there's no universe where we think like, well, her blood sugar's normal because I gave her insulin. I don't ever have to give her insulin again because her blood sugar's normal. No, this is something she's got to get multiple times a day throughout the day for the rest, unless there's some miraculous breakthrough in restoring beta cells to the pancreas, she will be on insulin forever. And I think changing the point of view on obesity to a chronic condition versus, and I don't know all the, there is some argument over whether it can be called a disease or not. I personally think of it as a disease simply because I never got rid of it. And if I let my guard down today, it's coming back. And that's just been proven to me through my entire life.
Yeah, if you don't mind me interjecting for just a second on the idea of it being a disease, because I struggled with that literally for probably the first year and a half or so that I was learning about these medications. I still wanted to believe that if I just worked hard enough. Well, the fact is, I've spent 20 years working hard enough. Again, I've probably lost over 500 pounds in my lifetime, right? But it comes back and you're losing the same. So this idea of it being a chronic relapsing disease, something that might help you as a listener of this show today understand the disease. The medications, or the class of medications that came before GLP-1s, was called DPP-4 inhibitors. So DPP-4 inhibitors, really fast. DPP-4 is a byproduct of a specific gut bacteria that study after study has shown in people who are type 2 diabetic and obese is run amok. It's a bacteria run amok that makes this byproduct called DPP-4. Guess what its number one job is? To destroy nutrient stimulated hormones that are signaling to your brain satiety. So the medications that came before GLP-1s were just designed to kill that thing that kills the GLP-1. It's just that these new medications are like the next evolution in treating that hormonal dysregulation. So when we talk about disease, we're talking about specific processes in the bodies that aren't functioning normally. And I always like to say that these medications are doing one thing: they're leveling the metabolic playing field.
Yeah, it's amazing. And from what I've seen and what I've read, it's such an advancement. As a kid, I was put on a medication once called fen-phen, and the result was that I didn't sleep for a week, and I was a fairly little kid, and my heart rate was like a jackhammer all the time. And then my mom was like, okay, this does not seem right. He's bouncing off the walls. Let's get him off of this. Thank God, because that drug wound up having terrible side effects. But to your point, there is 20 years of data to show that there is safety in these. And they seem to be, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably have the data closer to hand than I do, that 2024 was the first tick down in obesity in America in 30 years.
Yep, in my lifetime. I can't remember but when I heard the same stat, it was like the first time in my lifetime that obesity went the other direction.
Right, which is amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. Do we have another question, Trace?
We have a question from Ryan, and then Alyssa has one as well coming up next.
Great. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Ethan. How we doing, brother? Longtime fan.
Thanks, man.
So I had a traumatic spinal cord injury about 8 years ago, yeah? Had to have a surgery, and instead of embracing the change in that, I kind of went inward, right? At the time, I'm morbidly obese. We're talking about 400 pounds plus. And along the way, I have found that if I can truly silence the traffic that's going on nonstop, whether it's the addictive traits that I possess, whether it's anxiety of, failure to start, the things that go with, existing in this world. Do you have any tips and tricks, somebody that's overcome addiction and obesity and a person that's maintained for a long time that healthier lifestyle? How do you silence that so you can really channel that pure intention, Ryan's actual voice, instead of just the madness that detracts from the heart center?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Can I ask you, your spinal injury, where are you at now with that?
So geographically, I'm in Hawaii, so things are looking up. But no, I understand. So post-injury, I had to learn how to walk again. I went from wheelchair to walker to forward arm crutches, which almost 8 years later, I'm still on. They're my Lamborghinis. It's how I get around, you know. I maintain kind of a gorilla physique because it's all upper body. And so the injury I have is called quad equine syndrome. And in Latin, it means the horse's tail, right? And so my nerve endings in my spine were compressed and crushed. Unfortunately, being overweight at the time and living in an area that was very remote, there was no MRI that could fit me, so nobody could assess my injury properly, and unfortunately, long-term effects of that, you know. And so along with that came learning how to use the facilities again, loss of consortium. I wasn't able to use my manhood for quite a while. You know, the things that I wasn't even prepared for at the time mentally that I had to overcome. And so long story short, Ethan, I'm here in Hawaii. I decided to make a change, leave it behind, Ryan 2.0. I've been on this island about 6 years, and I literally get up every morning with that determination. And actually something I heard you say on a podcast not that long ago, it's a quote from Wolf of Wall Street, and it's that opportunity. You know, opportunity. And instead of having that constant assessment of, can I go that far? Can I sit there? Will that chair support me? Will I be a burden to my surrounding? No, it flipped. Opportunity. And so anything that's that mental block, I replace it with that word. And it's been a game changer, brother.
That's amazing.
Easily dropped 50 pounds in 5 months, not even trying. And just literally, even though I cannot feel the ground literally with my feet, just one foot in front of the other. What's the alternative? A life of complacency. My body atrophies. I'm a burden on my wife of 14 years. All those things that I don't want to, I'm not strong enough to even fully, compartmentalize all of those thoughts. But, you know, your guest had just mentioned his faith in the Lord, and it is something that I had turned my back on. I was raised straight Catholic, where it's just fed to you. You know, you have to go to the things, you have to do the prayers. And, you know, like most, I think I kind of turned away from it, saying it's not for me. And I led a life of recklessness and abandon and, you know, the real punk rock street life. And I think I had always just searched for a place to be. And, you know, long story short of ending up here in Hawaii, I finally found community that cares. They call it talk story out here. We talk to one another. We remove our sunglasses and we look eye to eye. And, you know, I try to put this little piece of glass, being my phone, down for 12 hours a day. Otherwise, I'm consumed in the matrix of it all, brother, you know?
Yeah.
But in turn, the positivity of these things like we're sitting at right now is that I can talk to a community that's been through it, an older brother type like you that's been through the throes of it. And, you know, I've followed your career through all of that, man. And if people like you exist in the world and we can connect in this way and talk story, share our experience, then all this around doesn't matter. You know, all the BS that we're fed doesn't matter, because we can actually speak with true intent and you know, a clear conscience, knowing that we're trying to live aloha, you know, love one another, you know.
Totally. No, I think communication is super vital in this area. And I wanted to know about your spinal injury, because the thing that helps me the most when I am becoming consumed with those voices or demons or whatever you want to call them is movement. And if I sit and stew in that kind of stuff, it becomes harder and harder. I will be inactively talking myself into going down the road that is not most beneficial for myself. But if I just move, if I go on a walk, if I do some exercise, if I get up and I get out of my head and look around, walk outside, that is proven to be the most helpful thing to me, because inside my head can be a real nightmare sometimes, but outside the world almost always proves to be calmer, saner, more rational, more decent than whatever's going on in my head. And you know, that has been the most. So if I would say that stuff starts to sneak up, I also try to look for it before I'm deep in it. You know what I mean? when a feeling comes over me, I want to get up and go do something else so that I don't have to talk myself out of sitting still and being comforted by my dark thoughts when they're kind of overwhelming.
Absolutely. I found here in Hawaii, not only am I able to recreate, because they have beautiful parks that are all ADA compliant, and I could go down the list of how well this community treats their community, those that have limitations, right? But getting up every morning and being able to go feed my goats or tend to the plants. I grow, they call it pakalolo out here, but medicinal cannabis. And I've gone through the, CBDs and the extractions, the RSO oils. I've found a lot of medicinal benefits in that. Now, because of my condition, I have neurogenic bladder, so I cannot do the Ozempics, the things like that really cause my tummy to go away, which, is not beneficial. And so I've been taking Jardiance, which is a pill form of these weight loss drugs. And aside from a regimented daily remember to take your pill type of thing, all I have done is hydrate, which is very important out here. I mean, I'm not lying if I tell you I drink 4.5 gallons of water per day. And once I started doing that, my system really reacted well to it. The neuropathy in my legs would kind of subside a little. I get the little tinglies back. And, my condition, they call it saddle anesthesia. So imagine riding a horse. Anywhere that your body touches that saddle, I can no longer feel. But the better I treat myself, there's little vibrations again, man. So it goes back to what the doctor originally said to me. He was very blunt. He said, you're done. You're not going to have these things back. And you know what? Getting up and moving and finding community is the key, Ethan. So I appreciate your time, man. I know you got, but once again, I want to know if you ever found the sailboats.
I never saw the sailboat. And by the way, I can see those magic eye posters. Thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, bro. Take care of yourself. Aloha.
You too.
Yeah, that was great. We now have Alyssa.
Okay. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi. Thanks so much, Ethan, for... Sorry, I don't even know why I'm getting emotional. Today is October 7th, and it's an anniversary of something that happened. But thank you for doing this. Community is so important because I started tracking my weight in about 2013. I look at my FitnessPal, right? And slowly it goes up, and then slowly it goes down, and goes up, and goes down. And I was pre-diabetic. So each time I go down, it obviously goes away. And my grandmother had diabetes, both legs amputated below the knee. And my father has diabetes. He does insulin injections now, and he also started Ozempic. But then he had like a kidney issue, and he restarted Ozempic now, but he's not really losing weight. Well, he lost all the weight. He's about 90 kilograms now, 88 or so. But his obsession with food has not stopped. Like, he still buys like all the things that he thinks he wants. He eats less, but so I know my future is kind of predetermined unless I change something. In 2023, in January, I signed up for this transformation program for women who are kind of a little older. I wasn't there yet, but at the time, it was very expensive, but it was about 50 women. We got kind of nutrition program and coaching through exercise. And with that, and the community, there was like check-ins and Facebook page. And with that, I lost 44 pounds and I was feeling great. I mean, obviously little pains and injuries and all that. And it was hard to sustain it. And then lost my job in March of 23. I couldn't find a job. And then October 7th happened in Israel. My parents live here, and it was very traumatic. And I couldn't kind of regain my going. Like I couldn't, and I started slowly gaining weight. And I couldn't find a job. And I was emotionally really traumatized, and I couldn't get going. So I regained all the weight. And gained more weight. And it's so hard to get back the food, the noise. So I was thinking like Monjaro is but the cost and the fear, and maybe I should like power through it. And so I guess my question is, sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
No, it's totally okay.
It's just been a hard day today. Just my question is, I guess, like, do I power through it? About a week ago, I started again, kind of counting calories, focusing on protein, but I'm just afraid it's like not sustainable long term. Because I've tried and I keep going back, and I try and I keep going back. So today, actually, I watched a video about Manjaro and like how it's not like Ozempic because it's attacking it from two directions, right? But I don't know in terms of cost and like availability and all that stuff. And so sorry about that. So anyway.
No, you are fine. And listen, I'm feeling emotional because of your emotion, and I think that on top of the anniversary today, this is an emotional subject. So you are totally fine. And yeah. I want to say something, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dave because he understands these things. But I think with any of these solutions that we find, where you're having success with your community and your check-in and anything like that stops, I think the weight comes back. That was my experience on every single diet. I did a thing called OptiFast when I was 10 years old, where I went to a center and we sat and we did talk therapy, and I saw a doctor every week, and I had to get on a scale, and I was given shakes, and I was only drinking shakes and drinking diet soda, and I was losing weight. The minute I stopped going to that, the weight came back. Every diet that you do a diet. The minute it stops, most likely the weight's coming back. So this is like anything else, where we are, behaving as though we have an acute condition, like a headache, and we're treating it with an Advil, rather than going and finding what the actual causation of the headache is. If we're having a headache every single day, eventually we're going to go to the doctor and say, what's causing this terrible headache? I can't think. I'm taking Advil every day. But when the headache goes away, obesity is not like that. It comes back. And this is a perfect way to segue into, I would just say that if you go the route of Monjaro and then you come off of it at some point, that likely the weight will come back. I think that it's like a radical overhaul to your life that's permanent and forever. Whatever the intervention is, it kind of, I think, has to be forever for most people. And as far as the cost goes, I want to let also Dave talk to you about this, because he actually knows more about these things than I do. Hopefully the cost is coming down. I think the more time that goes by, the cost must go down. I believe the cost has come down significantly. Am I right about that, Dave?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, but yes, you're correct. The prices have come down. I'm not sure. Alyssa, am I saying your name right?
Yeah,
Alyssa, I'm not sure. You live in the United States?
I usually do, but I had to come back to Israel to take care of my parents. My mom has dementia, and it worsened after all the stuff that was happening. So
sure. Well, I too just want to take a moment to acknowledge your pain. I think we're all feeling that from you today, and I also want to say, isn't it kind of funny how it's kind of a universal story that those of us who deal with problems of weight, the second that life gets in the way, and that could be pain, trauma, job. You fill in the blank. Isn't it funny that the second life gets a little squirrely, the first thing to go is the focus that we have on our weight? And that's because it literally takes all of our energy when we're living with a chronic disease to address it. And so that's why
all the resources go to that. Like all of the mental goes there, and anything on the side, that's it. You're done. You're done for. It's maddening.
There's no margin when you're dealing with a chronic disease to deal with anything else. That's why I'm convinced that the first time life gets squirrely, it's the first thing that fails, because we don't have the additional resources. And that's really where the magic of these medications are. So two things I want to bring to your attention right away. First thing is Mounjaro in Israel is a lot cheaper than it is in the United States. And so that may be something that you want to look into while you're there. I know, it might be a little bit different to get it back, but in Israel, it's actually in the United States, a 1 month supply is 4 of these pens, but the ones they sell in Israel are 1 pen, kind of like the Ozempic pen, and it's for the full month. So you may be able to buy a few months. But anyways, one of the things that I wanted to encourage you on too is there's a study that was done recently. It's the longest study for the active ingredient in Mounjaro, tirzepatide. It was a 4-year study, and in this 4-year study, 94% of pre-diabetics did not become diabetic. 94%. So it's been shown as a prophylaxis against diabetes. If you think that managing obesity is hard, managing obesity and diabetes is just that much harder. And so I would just encourage anybody who's looking at pre-diabetes, and which is a genetic, I mean, it's undeniable that it's genetic. If your parents have it, if your aunts, uncles, grandparents have it, even if you're not overweight, the chances of you getting it yourself are so much higher. So I would just encourage you that the data that's out there is showing that these are a great prophylaxis against developing diabetes, and the cost is coming down. I think there will be a lot more news on that in the next couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. Alyssa, thank you so much. And
Thank you both so much. This was kind of like a balm to my wounds today. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate it.
absolutely appreciate you too. And Dave, thank you for being here too, man. This has meant a lot to me. You've helped so much, and I appreciate what you're doing, and you can talk so eloquently about it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Ethan. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled programming. I'd like to share a first things first from Aaron in Omaha. He says, I've never belonged to a gym, but I've started going for a walk every morning, first thing before breakfast, and it's taken me months to do it regularly, mostly because my feet and legs hurt so much. But by focusing more on the food I put into my body, I've begun to make real headway. Over the last 5 months, I've lost 25 pounds, and yes, I've eaten a lot of cottage cheese along the way. Do you have any suggestions for my next step? The gym? Listen, I think it took me years and hundreds of pounds lost to feel confident enough to go to the gym. And I felt finally when the gym became like another community for me, that it was the silliest thing in the world to not go. So yes, I love the gym. The gym is an amazing place to go to move your body and exercise. Absolutely. If you're hesitant at all, increase walking, walk faster, walk uphill, go for a longer walk. But the gym for me is like a magical, holy place. It's the only time in the whole day where my phone is off. I usually have it with me and I'm listening to music. But it's on airplane mode. Nobody's calling me. I'm not returning texts. I'm not scrolling social media. I am doing stuff for myself. And I can do that on a walk too. I really enjoy walks. But I love the feeling I get every day when I leave the gym and my day is better. When I I love resistance training because it makes me feel good physically and mentally. There's a clarity to it. So yeah, I encourage the gym, absolutely. The gym is a great next step for you. All right. Each Monday on my Substack, located at ethansuplee.substack.com, I set up a chat where you can post your progress, share your struggles, ask questions, or spread some positivity. You can even upload photos if you want.
We've got Dan Crooks on the line.
Amazing. Dan.
Hello, Ethan.
How are you, brother?
How's it going, man?
Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Pleasure for you and Dave for having this. Thank y'all so much. I just have a quick question, man. Your journey has been an inspiration for me, right? I've been a big back my entire life. You know, it's a part of my I would say, a part of my brand now.
Yeah, I love the Big Back song is incredible. I love it every time you do it. It's my favorite.
Thank you, man. So that being said, I'm also in the process of what I call unbigging my back, right? I've been doing the walks. I'm currently at like a 3-mile average walk. But I wanted to ask you about, how do you handle the mental tricks of I find that during this process, I'm trying to lose 80 pounds, right? And it felt like the most difficult thing in the world. And I'm still in the process of it. I feel like I've lost 80 pounds 100 times, right? But how do you deal with like the mental talk of, man, I'm starving right now. I need to go and eat something because I feel like I'm going to pass out, or, like, how do you handle that negative talk that might lead you to backsliding to old habits?
Yes, this is something I experienced exactly what you're talking about. I can remember being mid a diet and coming home to my wife and not having eaten and saying to her, I'm starving, I can't do this. And for me, there was a point where I had to get really specific. And this is more of a mindset thing, what we're talking about, with the language I use with myself. Because the reality was, I was never starving. I was hungry. I was for sure hungry. But when I start a diet, I have to also consult my willingness and go, is it okay that I'm hungry on this diet? I found hunger is a strange thing because it's not, when I'm dieting, a constant feeling forever. I'm not hungry from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed. It comes in spurts. And I had to get okay with that. I'm okay with being hungry sometimes. But I wasn't ever starving. And when I would say, and when I would use that language, I'm starving, it made it so much easier for me to crack and go and eat a pizza or get McDonald's or something like this. When I got really strict with my language, I won't say I'm dying. I'm dying, I'm starving, I'm miserable, because that extreme language, that exaggeration pushes me down the path of allowing myself to backtrack on whatever goals I've set for myself. So the very first, exactly to your point, that kind of language with myself, and then with how I talk to other people, I became very literal and very specific so that I wouldn't open the door. Because look, if you're actually starving, go eat. You should go eat. Starving, the definition has a very specific meaning. It's like malnutrition for a long period of time to where you're having, organ failure and real problems. And I don't think, brother, you and I are starving. We are not starving people.
Fair, very fair. Yeah. So would you say in that, because a part of me knows that, right? But in the moment, the feeling feels so strong at the time. Would you say that a part of it is like, I want to say an acceptance of suffrage is maybe too much, but is it just knowing that, I'm gonna be hungry and you're hungry and that's the point?
I think it's a little bit of that. And look, there is a part of me that would love to lay in a waterbed all day long with the TV on and have somebody bring me food. Uber Eats can just deliver me food all day long. And then I want somebody in my house to bring it from the door to my bed. You know what I mean? Be utterly comfortable all day long. Maybe have a few people come in to move my body in case I get sore from not moving for so long. That would be amazing. But the long-term effect of stuff like that is so damaging to me that I have to go okay, well, am I willing to get up and walk to the bathroom? Yes, of course, I have to go to the bathroom. So there's some movement. Am I willing to wipe my own butt? Do I need to hire somebody to do that because I want just comfort all the time, you know? And so I think to some degree, there is an acceptance in suffering or being uncomfortable or just working hard that I think we do no matter what, you know. Going to work isn't always easy. You know, I'm sure making your videos isn't always easy. Whatever you're doing, there is going to be some effort you have to put into it. And the willingness to have that effort be enough to get you to the task that you want to get or the goal you want to reach you have to consult it and think like, what is it really going to take? In order to lose 80 pounds, you're going to have to be hungry at some point. Now, if it becomes this thing where you're extremely hungry all the time, you're standing up and you're lightheaded and you start to get cold all the time and you can't concentrate on anything else and you can't think about anything else but food. Food is haunting you're having dreams about food. My suggestion in that case would be maybe you're too hungry. You know what I mean? But for me, when I start to get those little thoughts of like, I'm starving, I can't do this anymore, I have to sit back and go, I'm not actually starving and I want to lose X amount of pounds and I'm willing for it to be not just easy all the time and I'm going to be a little bit hungry because I find, especially for me with sobriety, it's really sobriety and food that I'll constantly be trying to talk myself into stuff, you know, like I'm in New York right now and we walked by 3 pizza places before I got here and you know, you can smell it from a block away and you just see in the window a big pizza that you can buy for $2 for a slice. And there's parts of my mind that are going like, well, you could just have a bite or you could just have a slice and you could go exercise after. And like the game I play with myself is constant. It doesn't let up. These voices trying to get me to go down that path. So I have to shut those off real quick. And the language I use with myself, I've found to be really important on how much of that battle, the part of me that really wants to succeed at this goal or the part of me that doesn't care about the goal, that just wants comfort right now.
Okay. So it's really like a decision that has to be made, almost like a realization.
Yeah.
If you will.
Yeah. And I don't think it's something that happens innately. I don't think it's something that just occurs like, you know, Siddhartha sat under the Bodhi tree for 40 days and became enlightened. I wanted that enlightenment, but it was really more clinical where I had to sit down and go like, what's it actually going to take for me to lose this weight? And then after that, what's it actually going to take for me to keep this weight off? And am I willing to do that? You know, am I willing to be hungry sometimes? Am I willing to, for the most part, give up highly processed foods? You know, not to say I don't ever eat that stuff, but like, if I had my way, I would be eating half the stuff you show in your Instagram videos all day long. You know what I mean? Like I look at those because they're comforting to me. And the stuff when you sing the Big Back song, I want to eat that all day long because it makes me feel good in that way. But now for me, it's really more like a handful of times a year that I have meals like that. And for the most part, and I'm willing for that to be the way life is, you know?
Okay. I'm at a point now where I'm like kind of compromising with myself. I'm like, okay, I really do want ice cream right now. Right?
Yeah.
But, okay, are you willing to walk to the store to get ice cream?
Sure. And I have one further for you, Dan. Are you willing to have Halo Top? Halo Top has like a quarter or less the calories than regular ice cream. You could get it, walk to the store and have a Halo Top. It's 350 calories instead of 1600. There's all these trade-offs.
True. Okay. That's what so that's the kind of stuff I've been doing. I find it helps, you know. I'm down. I was at 272. I'm at 257 now, and I'm trying to like just keep on it. And I'm trying not to celebrate too early too, because I have that moment of like, oh man, you did it. You could go kill a pizza right now.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm still trying to fight that self-talk that sometimes it's negative and sometimes it's positive sounding, but still having that negative result that I don't want.
Yeah. No, it's a fine line, and I think the consultation of your own willingness is paramount. And then I've found it super useful to police my language a little bit, to really be careful what I say to myself, because I can paint a picture of reality that just isn't true very quickly. I'm starving becomes, if I don't eat this thing, I'm gonna die, or but I can get that exaggerated and extreme in my head.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, man. I
Dan,
appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you. And I keep doing the big back songs. They're amazing.
I got you.
Dan Crooks, thank you. All right. Now for today's Daily Nudge, the moment that I share a clip that we can use as a learning experience. Today, it's DJ Shipley talking about using routine to make yourself unbreakable, something we addressed last week. Now, DJ's discipline as a former Tier 1 Navy SEAL is obviously on another level, but that's not the point. The takeaway should be that whether you want to be one of the baddest people on the planet or just content with yourself, it all comes down to commitment. Because at some point, we all have to face the truth. There's no magic fix. Only you can change yourself.
I think guys use excuses, injuries, limitations, lack of motivation, like, oh, there's no reason for me to be in shape. Longevity of life. Everybody says, oh, I take a bullet for my kids. You won't lose 40 pounds for them. You won't prolong life. If you think you're a real asset to your family, why wouldn't you try to maximize that time? So I look at him now. It doesn't take a whole lot. Like, you don't have to be David Goggins. You don't have to run 100 miles a day. You can wake up and do a 20-minute walk every single day and you'll be better off for it. You could grab a set of kettlebells, 30 minutes in your garage. That is something every single day that makes you exponentially better just through the repetition of being there.
I love that. I love that so much. Before I wrap it up, let's revisit the concept of first things first. This is where you share with the community what you are doing every morning to set the day's agenda to reach your goals. Goals I want you to think of as fun. This shouldn't be super hard. Please send me your routine suggestions or any questions to Ethan Suplee Show at twoway.tv. You can also upload a video or audio message on the Two-Way website or contribute to the Monday conversation in my Substack chat. It might just be your ideas that help someone else in our community. And a secondary goal to your own advances is push each other forward. So go to my YouTube, Ethan_Suplee, and subscribe, share it with your friends. And if you'd like to contribute to the show, like Dan and Dave and everybody else who called in today, please register at twoway.tv/Ethan Suplee, where you will also find the links to my YouTube, Insta, and X. We'll be back here Monday, November 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, because health is lifelong, built, not born.